Morning to you, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing well this morning. I've got a full cup of coffee and I'm bright-eyed and ready to go.
Great. So, as one of the earliest crypto apprentices, I'm interested in your development of your time in the real world. So, how did it all begin for you?
So, back in the days when the real world had a very small amount of people, I actually, around the same time, I had been just introduced to the content of the Tate brothers, various podcasts and interviews, and I started thinking about this HU, or the real world thing. And it started with my friend showing me the signals chat of Adam and Michael and how they were making their calls. And he basically said, "You need to get your ass in here. You're losing out on making money." This was at the height of the bull run where everybody was in full mania. You couldn't take 5 steps without people throwing wads of cash at the crypto markets. Everybody was talking about Bitcoin around the bar tables. It was just absolutely absurd. So I started stepping into the real world with a greedy intention. I was greedy and I was selfish because I looked at it and said, okay, $50 a month. Yeah, that's worth some signals to me. Let's make some money. And I got in there. So that's kind of how I discovered it and how I stepped in.
Mhm. And what was your life like at the time?
So admittedly, I was not in the best of places. And I've come to realize that now after several months of introspection, development, reflection, uh, all those sorts of things. Where I was at before was I was in a concrete box of an apartment. Like it was the most stereotypical engineered cutout box, concrete walls, concrete ceiling. It was a depressing place to be in. And that's where I was. I was kind of isolated in that place where I didn't have too many friends calling in. This was in the height of the pandemic, and so everybody was locked down. Everybody was afraid. Nobody wanted to meet up. So I had very few friends that were reaching out and wanting to hang out. So I was not in a good place mentally or physically, and I've only come to realize that later on. But I was unemployed. I was earning maybe 12 to 1500 a month Canadian. And that was partly substantiated with employment insurance. So brokey money, essentially, that the government gives you for free. And yeah, I was taking that money and I was trying to throw it at the crypto markets with the stubborn intention of I can get rich by clicking buttons. So that's kind of where I was at.
So, since we're doing a confessional here, I was also a believer in XRP to the point where I even done some leveraged longs into it.
Oh boy.
So yeah, that is very relatable from my end as well. And that was before I joined the real world. If I had been in the real world, the professors would like everyone who was asking about XRP, they were saying it's not going to go anywhere. Like they were warning you against it. But because of all the biases out there, you just confirmation bias. You're looking for the articles, everything that supports it. It seems like there's no way this doesn't work out. But again, I didn't have that rational mind because I as well was not in the real world at the time.
Well, and it's a very easy mistake to make when you first get in there, right? Where you've done all this research and you've invested so much time and effort and energy into pursuing these leads, and then this random guy on the internet that drives supercars looks at you and says, "No, you idiot, don't do that." And you're like, "Well, f you, man. I want to do this," and then you're proven wrong. Like it's been very it's humbling. It's very humbling, and if you go in with that kind of mentality, like that was the mentality I approached it with. For anybody familiar with Socrates, the only thing I knew about crypto is that I knew nothing. And I went into HU with that kind of mentality. It was very difficult because, again, like you, I invested a lot of time and energy and 20x longs into XRP. And yeah, it was a rocky road at the beginning for sure. So Um,
Right. Okay. So how different was the material for you in the real world compared to what's out there on the internet?
so that's a very interesting observation because back when I first joined the campus, well, the overall campus. So this was the entirety of the membership was only at about 4,400 members. So there was a much more like this is the classic situation with any sort of business or community growing exponentially. Is that as you expand, it's more difficult to have the same kind of interaction and outreach. Back at the time that I joined, there was a little bit more of a personal flavor to it, just because the you were able to kind of converse with the professors more directly. But what I was finding was that a lot of the sharp individuals who have gone quiet since or have found success since their joining, they were the ones talking, and there was a lot of well formulated questions, kind of like a small university class of like only about 20 students and a professor. It has such a different feel in a small classroom than it does in a large amphitheater with 4,500 students and one professor, right? Uh, but that's been a very fun challenge for we as the apprentices and professors to actually engage with, because it's still finding that balance of how do we give that personal touch in addition to the lesson material. So what we see now is a much more refined version and a much more refined product, which I think they've done a phenomenal job. It's night and day difference from what we started out with, but the information quality is the same. That has been the consistent baseline of the entirety of this campus that I've been in. And I can only say good things about the crypto campus because I know it the most. But I've spoken with some of the other apprentices in other campuses, and they say the same thing. The baseline consistency of that information and quality of information and lesson material has been a founding aspect of HU or the real world since its inception. That would be the best way that I can describe it.
But how